Hello! Welcome back for another tutorial for Tinker's Construct. Today we're going to be covering the Longbow. Now this thing is very similar to the short bow. It has some unique tricks of its own, but for the most part, yeah, it is still a different weapon and it is a heck of a lot more powerful. So stick around, we're going to cover that here in a second. Okay, so with any weapon here, we're going to cover how to build it first. Now, you can only build the short bow inside of the regular tool station. You need an upgraded tool forge in order to build the longbow. Longbow itself is made using 2 bow limbs, a large plate, and a piece of bowstring, whatever you want to use. And you also have an assortment of parts available here and a bow right here. First we're going to talk about the individual statistics for these bows. So, you'll notice that just a wooden longbow variant has an arrow speed of 4.5, whereas a wooden short bow is only 3. So that in itself, considering it's only made out of wood, is still a pretty decent arrow speed. That draw speed is really high though in comparison. Now, if you get into some of the really ridiculous materials, such as making the entire thing out of shiny or platinum, you wind up with, in this case here, an arrow speed of 8.55. I can actually get that a little bit higher by modifying it a little bit more, but yeah, that's insane. Like when you realize how much damage that is going to pump out into someone or something. We'll use something for today. Or even a bronze one having a massive arrow speed of 7.65. So let's actually get into the damage statistic then. Damage for this thing is calculated, as you can see I'm using a flint arrow with an attack of 1 heart. So that means that basically multiples of 1 are how much damage it's going to deal. Makes my life very easy. And a perfect example of this is the bronze bow. Now notice it has an arrow speed of 7.6, which technically would be 7.5 pre the last update, but now it's only 6.5, dropping by a solid heart. The wooden bow having an attack arrow speed of 4.5, dropping it down to 4. And same thing here, arrow speed of 1.5, dropping it down to 1. It seems to drop it off by about a fifth. Give it plus or minus a fifth. So basically, it's the arrow speed multiplied by the damage of the arrow, dropped by about a half. I don't know what the exact, or dropped by about a fifth, sorry. I don't know what the exact damage calculation is, but for the most part, if you need to do it in your head, it's decent enough. Now, in terms of how the individual parts affect the bow, you'll notice here that it's broken down nicely. The bow limbs, obviously, affect durability, your draw speed, and your arrow speed. The bow limbs also help affect how much damage the weapon does in melee. Alright, so that's important if you're wanting to create like a battle bow that you can use in melee combat as well. The other thing to note is the large plate does affect how much damage it does in melee, as well as just a base flat addition to its durability. And the bowstring is where you can actually get your durability multipliers, your arrow speed multipliers, and your draw speed multipliers, depending on which bowstring you plan on using. So let's get right into making one of these bows, shall we? Now, as with any bow, we're going to want to add some certain parts to it. You can just straight up make a bow entirely out of like platinum if you really want to, and like give it the best of everything, and it's going to be pretty nutters. Like this thing has an arrow speed of 10.26. Like you're putting arrows into orbit at that speed. But it only has 3 modifier slots available to it. And that's not really that great. That draw speed too of 5.9, you're going to need to drop that by a whole bunch. And so it's got its downside. But if we swap that out for like steel. Steel's a whopping 5.9. Take it down to paper. Yeah. Since it doesn't really affect the draw speed at all. Nor the arrow speed. However, if I change that plate over to paper, it does give me 4 modifiers now instead of 3. So let's see how ridiculous we can get this thing up to. This only gives us 5 modifiers, so one thaumic addition is really all you really want to add. So you could go like all the way to something ridiculous by doing something like this. Now, plastic bow limbs have an arrow speed of 4.2. Generally, adding it together then knocking off about a third, if I remember correctly, is what it is. These two here combined Yeah, there it is. These two here for an arrow speed of 5.7 combined, which would add up to 11.4. But the bow itself has an arrow speed of 8.5, yeah, so knocking off about a third. The obsidian bow I believe I have here is the perfect example of this. Yes, arrow speed of 1, arrow speed of 1 combined. Oh, sorry, knock it off by a quarter, not a half, or a quarter, not a third. So in terms of that, arrow speed, plastic and copper both have really good speeds on them, as does thaumic. Iron has a decent speed, but that draw speed's really, really high, and you're pretty much adding the draw speeds together. So 4.9, make it a copper then. I should have a bow here with a whopping 5 modifier slots. Even if I swap one of these over to thaumic here, oh, it does go up to 6. Take me up to 7? No. So I have 5 modifiers, an arrow speed of 5.9, which is really, really good for a starting bow. And a draw speed of 2.85 seconds, which is 3 seconds. That could be worse. I could change this over to plastic if I really, really wanted a really, really high draw speed. But I'll lose some of my arrow speed, which actually means losing some of my damage. I still have the 5 modifier slots, thankfully. 5.1 isn't bad, but that draw speed of 1.4 is really, really enticing. But my melee attack is only 0.5. So it's a bow you shouldn't really be using in melee that much, especially a longbow. But you never know. You might want the option available to you. In this case, however, we're going to make a bow that looks like this. And notice I have 6 modifier slots on that thing, just by using a piece of enchanted bowstring, thaumium bow limb, and a copper bow limb. All this is done inside FTB Infinity, so that's why I have access to these things here. Otherwise, you might want to stick to using pure copper and regular everyday bowstring, because that's all you'll have access to. But let's make our copper bow, and we're going to call it the beat stick. There you go, 1 beat stick. Alright, so now we can get into the real nitty-gritty of this. The modifiers of this thing. So we have a bow now. It's pretty decent. It does some decent damage. Well, it does some okay damage. It's doing 5.5 hearts, so generally over half the health of most mobs. Modifiers that I like putting on a bow. We're gonna make this a battle bow. We're gonna make this a non-traditional bow. A normal bow you'd want to pile on the redstone, get that draw speed almost down to nothing. Maybe get some way of repairing it cheaply. You know, like putting a ball of moss or leadstone capacitor on it to try and make it RF flux based. We are going to make it auto repair with a ball of moss, just because that's handy. As you can see, moss. Any damage that's done to the bow now will automatically repair over time. We are also going to add in a bit of redstone, so 1 full stack of redstone here. And as we click through that, now a battle bow is a bow that you can use in both melee and ranged combat, similar to what we do with the short bow, but this thing here will be able to deal a little bit more damage. Right now it's at 1 heart. We're gonna bump that up a lot, because there is no limit to the amount of quartz that you can pile on. Now similarly with the other ones, we are going to still want the pistons. That's just handy, so separate that into 10 because the maximum stack size is 10. And boom. And even with all these modifiers on it, there are still 3 left over at the end of the day. So let's pile this on here. I'll be back as soon as we pile on the quartz, see how much we actually get at the end of the day, and we'll be back in a second. Alright, so now we have our beat stick all the way up. All of its modifiers consumed, with my personal favorite with regards to a melee-based bow. This bow is nutters. It's got a fairly high draw speed there, 2.35 seconds. However, with just flint-based arrows, these are very rudimentary arrows, very, very beginner arrows. The arrow itself only deals 1 heart of damage. It's still dealing a whopping 5.5 hearts of damage in ranged combat. However, there's an additional statistic on these that you normally can't see, and that is how much damage it deals in melee combat, which is listed over here. This longbow in melee combat is going to be dealing 6 hearts of damage. To put that into perspective, a diamond sword, it marks it there at 7 attack damage. That's because it's 3.5 hearts of damage. This deals nearly double the damage of an iron sword. Using fairly rudimentary materials, just a lot of them. As you can see, it took 216 nether quartz. The 10 pistons I added to this thing here too, just because the bow itself actually has reduced knockback on it in melee combat. And that's a balancing reason. That just makes sense, right? It's a bow, it shouldn't really have that much knockback. So I gave it the stack of pistons in order to compensate for that. The ball of moss at the end of the day is going to guarantee that this thing here will be able to survive combat. Now, as per usual, let's see how good the accuracy is on this thing. Now, the flint arrows themselves have an accuracy rating of 91%. The draw speed on this isn't atrocious, but considering it almost hit the target square on the mark, at 25 blocks, that's a pretty good clip. Oh, I didn't really charge up. Now, this bow crits if you wait about a half second after it hits all the way up to its, all the way up. Or as soon as it goes all the way into focus. It's roughly when it critical hits. The accuracy of these arrows is quite poor, but the draw speed is nice, considering I only put on 50 redstone. But enough about that. There's only so much we can test by shooting a target 100 times over. Let's test it out in some real combat. Some fun combat. Okay, so here we have a nice little horde of enemies coming towards us. Our battle bow is ready to go. Taking a good chunk of health out. One melee attack. One melee attack and a good arrow. Never seems to hurt no one. So even in melee combat, this thing here is doing pretty good. Those are very similar to zombies. And generally, I only used one arrow. That ain't bad. It's going to heal itself over time. Using it in melee combat is going to cause its durability to drop a lot faster than normal. As you can see, I only maybe meleeed 5-6 times. However, the durability dropped massively. It is repairing over time, though, thanks to the ball of moss. And this about concludes our tutorial here with regards to the Tinker's Constructed Longbow. If you enjoyed this, make sure you hit that subscribe and like button, and there's also a handful of things I want to mention here. The first of which being, keep in mind that your damage is proportional to the arrows that you're using. I do have a tutorial up on how to make arrows, and the more damage the arrow does, it is multiplied by that arrow speed. So, you might want to check that out, maybe get some more damage in those arrows, and you can easily get this thing over 10 hearts of damage. On that note, speaking of which, if you want to see this bow in action, make sure you check out my video on fighting the Ender Dragon. I wound up using a bow similar in damage, but not quite as battly. I do enjoy using this thing as a battle bow. It is powerful and it's fun. Nothing like surprising someone with something you can use in melee at the last second. So thank you all for watching. As always, I hope you enjoyed this, and it's Mattmon out for now. Deuces.